Hello and welcome back to the fifth part of the OpenRCT2 graphics, a tutorial series about the RCT graphics helper add-on for Blender. Last time we left off modeling a toadstool. Now we'll give it some textures. In this episode we'll dive into texturing in Blender 2.79, and this is assuming that you are probably using Blender version 4.3 or later. So we'll go over what changed in the workflow and what features were already there in version 2.79. So let's start with the basics. First we go into the material tab over here, and this is probably as familiar as it can be. You can add a new material to your object here, and then you have options for assigning a solid color, and you can add some other material slots over here with the plus icon, and for each and every of those slots you can assign a new material in a different color. And let's say I wanted to select this part, I can click assign, and this will assign all the selected faces to this material. Okay, let's go and add this first slot here and add a simple material. Let's call this mushroom. And now we want this to display some texture in here. We will head over to this tab, which is the texturing tab. This is still in existence in Blender 4.3, even though you would usually use the node editor over there to assign textures and stuff. So this is how it would usually be used back in the days. For every material here, let's add some again. Let's call this 2 and 3. You get a list of texturing slots. I think it is 18 or 19 texturing slots. And you can add like multiple textures to each and every material, and you will see that is per material here. Okay, and it depends on which material you have clicked on previously in this tab, and it displays which one you are currently editing over here. And then there's also like world textures and brush textures. Make sure to be in the material space over here. Okay, that's as far as the combination of those two goes. Okay, so we'll assign a new texture to this mushroom material. So let's get rid of this and edit the texture that is already here. Make sure to set the type correctly, image or movie, because we are going to use an image texture. This also would be the place where you can select generated textures like this wood texture, or a simple noise texture, or gradients, clouds, stuff like that. But we are going to use an image. I'm going to click open here and select one of my textures. I use textures that are publicly and freely available. One website that is even recommended by the documentation of the plugin is this one. Douyon.com. I'll link you this site again in the description. So public domain textures are necessary for contributing to the project, and I would generally recommend you use public domain textures to be able to share your objects freely. Okay, I love to use this concrete rough texture because it gives you a colorful noise that is really helping to sell like that there's much more detail in the object that it actually is. I have an alternative sandstone texture somewhere that I love to use as well, but for now this will do. Okay, to see our results, I'll change over to the material view, and you can already see that the color changed. Now for the actual texture, you need to correct the mapping. We have not UV unwrapped this shroom yet, so I will just hop over and use a generated texture mapping. And now we can actually see the texture being projected on the shroom. One thing that might be worth mentioning is that I'll collapse those tabs here. Every texture slot is like a layer in Photoshop. You can think of it like this. Only difference is that as in modifiers, they stack from top to bottom. So that means, let's go. That means a texture that is in the second slot here will be above the texture in the first slot. Let's just add one. Let's see if I can demonstrate that. Okay, let's choose some wood here. Let's choose a wood texture here and map that as generated as well. You can now see that this texture is no longer visible, but the wood texture is. And you have, like in Photoshop, you have an opacity fader kinda down here under influence. This color fader influences how opaque this texture is. And then you see all those other checkboxes here. That would be used if you are like making a PBR style texture combo. And then you have to uncheck color and say this is just affecting the, let's say, the specular intensity. And you say this kind of changed over here a little bit because it's now interpreting this image as a specular map. And even a normal map would be, this is showing up nicely. So you can see like this is not a normal map, but it's interpreting it as such, and so this gives you the impression of normals being here. You can do quite a lot with this faking stuff, and is kind of useful even if you don't have a normal map at hand. Okay, that's for the order of the layers. I will clear up this slot now and just go with the concrete texture here. And let's even give it a quick render and open the game to see what that looks like. Okay, I opened up OpenRCT2 right here, and let's render this again. And look at the results. We see right away that this seems quite different than what we would expect. This is perfectly normal though. That has to do with the way this image is sampled. Usually we would want Blender to soften up the differences between pixels. That is useful to not have artifacts and don't have it look so pixelated. It just looks more organic that way. But what we want essentially is to reduce the filter size here under image sampling. And I do something like 0.2, and this works even better with a simpler version of this filter. We'll talk about that later in detail. So let's see what difference that made and give it another render. And here we go. you see it's much more coarse in the texture, and this is actually on the right track now. Okay, let's see. This color is way too dark, but what we can do is change the blend mode between this texture and the diffuse color. Let's even preview that over here, so you can see the material as it is here, next to the texture. And let's change the blend mode from mix to, for example, soft light. And you see the effect becomes much more subtle. And we have now a way of color controlling this with the diffuse color. Maybe even a tad lighter, like this maybe. And let's just render that again and see how it looks. You can imagine I'm just trying to match the stem here. This seems even a little bit too saturated, so I can change this from RGB to hue, saturation and value, and lower the saturation here. Go more towards white. And let's see if we can, for example, activate normal here. That is not how normal would usually be used, but we can use that to our advantage without even generating a normal map. We just have a little bit of height variation here simulated by just the shadow, and we want this to be just this coarse texture. Let's give it another render. Yeah, well, not too bad. I'm going to tweak this a little more. For example, we could change the specular from Cocteau to Fong is working quite good. And just give it this overcast look that the stem has here. Oh well, I wouldn't like it in the cap here, but for the stem this is actually not too bad. By the way, let's stop using the generated mapping and properly UV unwrap this thing. UV unwrapping, if you don't know what that is, it is just folding the mesh onto a plane surface, so you can really take care of a proper projection, really precisely dictate where the texture should be on this surface. Okay, by hitting Control and E, you can mark this selection as a seam. You have to be in edge select mode to do that. And that is just splitting up those faces at this line. And I'm going to pick another line to split on along here. Okay, Control E to open the edge menu, mark seam. And I will even do a seam here, I guess. Control E, mark seam. You have to set enough seams to not distort the surface as much, but as few as you can to hide the transition between the zones. I guess that's a way to put it. Even though that does not matter too much here, but you might see the seams anyway. I'm opening a new window here with the UV image editor, and I am pressing A to select everything. And just for you to see what I'm doing, I'm opening up the concrete rough texture down in the menu here, and I'm pressing A to select everything, and U on the keyboard to open the UV mapping list here. and then I'm just clicking unwrap. And this adds those unfolded versions of the mushroom here. And you can see that nothing really has changed, but if I go to mapping down here and change this back to UV, then this is automatically using the parts down here, and this is projected onto the surface of the object. Okay, and it's looking much more even now. Let's see what that changed. And update this. Yeah, well, the surface is a little bit more clean, I'd say. But as you see, down to this pixel level, you cannot really tell, I guess. So usually it's fine to stay ungenerated. In this specific case, I'm going to add those dots here to the toadstool, and that requires me to have kind of a more defined way of working.